this engine cover. Just slide up, pull it out. We're going to take this air snorkel off. Use an 8mm socket. You can loosen up the worm clamp right there, and then also right here. Then a 10mm socket. Take these two bolts off. Then you can grab this hose, slide this out, slide the snorkel up, out. There is a connector right here. You're going to push down on the terminal, slide that off, and slide it out. Disconnect the connectors. There's one right here. Just move the wiring harness. There's a little retainer right here. If you have to, use a trim tool. Try to pry this out. There's a bracket right here. And there's a clip right there, and then disconnect it from the throttle body. There is a little lock tab on here. You just take a screwdriver and just slide it back and push down. Should be able to slide that off. There we go. Slide that out of the way. Take this hose off. It's a vacuum hose that goes to the brake booster. It just slides off. Take this clip off here. It's out of the way. There's a vent right here. Just slide this off the bracket. Out of the way. A couple other hoses. You can slide those out of the way. There's two nuts right here. Take those out. Use a 10mm socket. Take those off. This bracket right here, I'm going to remove that. It's going to make it a little easier. Use the same 10mm socket. Take these two bolts off. Now just grab the bracket and just slide it out of the way. Take these two nuts off. Use a 10mm socket. Now we're going to take the intake bolts out. There's 3 right here, and there's 4 down below. They're a little bit tricky to get to. Use an 8mm socket. I need to move this hose out of the way, so just slide this off the airbox. Just move this up. Just move this hose out a little bit. And there's two 10mm bolts that are attached to a bracket. Take those out. There's a cable right here attached to this bracket. We want to get this bracket off. So use a trim tool. Take the retainers off. So the cable's out of the way. There's another retainer right here. You can take that one off. Slide that out of the way. And there's two nuts, or 2 studs that attach to this. There's another wire right there as well. Now I'm going to take those two studs out. Use a 13mm socket. You could use a 13mm ratchet wrench too. Slide those out. If you're having trouble getting this from here, you could try to go in through the fender well. Now you can grab that bracket and slide it up. Take this foam off right here. Just use the trim tool. Pop these clips up. And just push this back a little bit. And just slide the insulation to the side. Try to move it to this side. Just trying not to rip it. And grab it, slide it up. Grab this foam insulation, set that aside. Disconnect the connector for the coil. Right here, just push down on the tab, slide it off. Take a 10mm socket. Take this bolt out and grab the coil. You might have to wiggle it back and forth a little bit. And slide it up just like that. And you can do the same on the other coils. Disconnect the connector right here. If you have to, use a screwdriver or a pick. And there's a little lock tab. You're going to move that back and slide the connector off. And there's a couple retainers holding the wires on right here. Take those off. Just pry up. Trying to be careful not to break it. Slide those out of the way. There's two connectors in the front. Disconnect those, just push down on the tab and slide them off. Oh, there's another wire harness right here. Good. There's a connector right here that goes to the AC compressor. You don't necessarily have to take this off, but if you take that one off, you're going to have a little more room with the wires. So slide that lock off and then push down on the connector. Try to release it. Or use your pick tool. There we go. And slide that out of the way. Gives you a little more room. We're going to take these actuators off. I'm just going to mark it so I put them back in the right place. This is for the intake one. This is for the exhaust. Just mark an E. And use a T25 socket. And just slide it out, set it aside, do the same with the other one. Take this sensor out in the back, use a T30 socket. Take this bolt out. And just grab the sensor, slide it up, and you just have to angle it a little bit and slide it out. Now, all along the perimeter of the valve cover, there is bolts. You want to take those bolts out, use an 8mm socket. There is another little retainer on there. And take all these 8mm bolts out. With all of those loose, just grab a screwdriver and just try to pry in between the head and the valve cover. Make sure you have all the bolts out. Might be a little RTV holding it down. Slide it up and out of the way. Now we're going to clean up this area. You can use a razor blade or a scraper. Just scrape up some of the RTV that's in the corners. Try not to let it fall into the engine. Right there as well. Now I'll just take some brake parts cleaner and a rag and just wipe it down. If there's any spots that you need the scraper, just scrape it off with that or the razor blade. And just clean all around where the valve cover gasket's going to go. We want to transfer this filler neck over to the new one. Just lift up on this tab right here. You can use a screwdriver. And then untwist it. It slides right out. Bring it over to the new one. Check the O-ring. Make sure it looks good. It looks okay. And just lock it in place. There you go. On the back side of the valve cover where the gasket is, take a little bit of RTV and just put a dab right there and right there. It's just going to make it seal a little better. It's basically where the head is going to connect to the timing cover. So if you wanted to, you could put a little dab right on the corner there and also down below there if you can reach it. But it's easier just to do it on the valve cover. And spin it around. Just line it up, make sure none of the wires are getting in the way. Or hoses. And the gasket should stay in the valve cover. And snug these all down. Now I'm going to torque these bolts to 106 inch-pounds. Make sure you're on inch-pounds, not foot-pounds. And I'm going to start in the middle of the valve cover and work my way out, crossing side to side. Install this sensor in the back, get it lined up, and snug it up. Connect the connector, and put the lock on. And with the wiring harness, you can slide that back over the stud in the back. And these harnesses can go in here. Now we can put this actuator on. Make sure you put the exhaust side on the correct side. And the intake, put that one right here. And tighten these down. And we can torque the VVT solenoid valves to 35 inch-pounds. All right, now I take the wiring harness and slide it back in position. You can connect it down where the AC compressor is first. Lock it down, push down on the lock, connect to these solenoids, lock them in. Attached to the valve cover. There's a hose that goes in the back. We want to attach that to the back of the valve cover. Right there. Now you can reinstall the coils. Line those up. Push those down, get them started. Snug the bolt down. And plug it in. Do the same on the other ones. Now we're going to replace the intake gaskets. Whenever you remove the intake, it's a good idea to replace these. Just take a pick, just get underneath here, and they slide right out. I'll just wipe this down with a little brake parts cleaner. It looks pretty good. The new gaskets, and they're all the same. Line them up and push them down. It doesn't matter which way is up or down, they're both the same. And those are all the way down. Now we can put the intake on. Now we can put this foam pad on. Just wipe the bottom of the intake. Just make sure there's no gasket material on here. That looks good. And just slide this in position. As you're sliding it in place, you want to keep in mind of that bracket on the passenger side. You got to get it underneath that bracket. All right, pull those up and get all the bolts started. I'm going to start from the center and snug these down. Now I'm going to torque these to 89 inch-pounds. The same alternating bolts. Now I take this insulation and just slide it in, tuck it in behind. You could also try to do this before you torque the intake down. There we go. And push it down. Reattach these hoses. Smaller one right here. And this one is going to go on the airbox. Good. I'll install this bracket. Just slide it in position. You can get two of the nuts started up top. Don't tighten those down yet, just so it doesn't fall off. And take the two studs. Get those started. And tighten those down. Tighten the nuts up top. Now install this bracket. Line that up over the studs. Get the 2 bolts started. .10mm socket. Now attach the brake booster hose. Line that up, push it on. And you can attach all the hoses to the brackets and the wiring harnesses. And connect the connector up here. Slide the harness in the bracket there. Retainer right there. Connect the throttle body. Oops. Slide the intake hose on. Connect this connector before you slide it all the way down. Lock it in. Get these 2 bolts started. And tighten these down. Push this hose back in place. Goes right there. And push down.